Hello, everyone. Welcome as you're filtering in. I know people are still coming in, but I just want to say hello and welcome. We're going to be waiting with you together for a few minutes as people keep filtering in. Just give folks time to enter the webinar. But a hearty hello to you on this chilly Vermont evening for me. And yeah, I'll do a more official introduction as more folks filter in. So welcome, everybody. And for everyone who's here, if you want to just say hello to everyone in the chat here, just remember to change that to everyone, not just host and panelists. And let us know where you're coming from, where you're zooming in from, what the weather's like, if you want to share that. But we are all so happy to be gathering with you tonight. And we'll give it just another minute or so, and then I'll jump into a more official introduction. All right, everyone. So it looks like our number is holding steady. So other people may filter in, but I'm seeing folks from all over the US, lots of Wisconsin folks. So maybe Cristina Norcross has something to do with that there, and folks from all over the place. So welcome to you again. This is what we are calling the medicine of poetry. And I had this idea for gathering these four beautiful poets tonight with me because, to me at least, it seems that we're all working in a very similar healing mode, that we are writing poems that heal ourselves and hopefully help to heal the world as well. And with us tonight, we have Zeina Azzam, we have Melinda Burns, Carolyn Chilton Casas, and Cristina M.R. Norcross. And myself, I'm James Cruz. And I will just get started a little bit tonight, read a few poems, and then we're going to go round robin style. So we'll each read a number of poems and then pass it off to the next poet. And if you have any questions at all for myself, the individual poets, or the collective group as a whole, if you have a question about writing poetry, putting together a book, something like that, go ahead and put those in the Q&A. It'll be harder for us to track any questions that are in the chat. So feel free to include those in the Q&A, and we'll leave some time at the end to get to those as we progress tonight. So I'm going to start with a poem from my book, Unlocking the Heart. And the subtitle of this is Writing for Mindfulness, Courage, and Self-Compassion, which feels like a lot to promise in these times, but hopefully the book still lives up to that. And, I often say that this book was written out of a place of wanting and trying to heal myself. And, it was written out of a place of deep grief. I had just lost my mother the year before and, was kind of under contract and under deadline to make this book. But I also felt really deeply called to put these poems together with reflections and writing prompts. And this one, perhaps appropriately, is called How to Meet a Moment. because we're all meeting this moment all the time. We're all meeting this moment that we're sharing here tonight together. How to meet a moment. To embrace a moment fully, surrender your thoughts to the grass between your toes. Let droplets of dew kiss your bare feet with innocence, like children. Walk the path to the apple tree planted 100 years ago, now supporting the graft of a few leafed out branches that hold the sunshine like a basket. Hold sorrow, too. Let it rise in you like yeasty sourdough left alone in a warm place on the table. And relish this necessary grief, the bread of which also feeds you. But once you're finished feeling it, be done. Find some other wondrous thing to give your whole self to. Blue twine woven in a warbler's nest, the seed heads of ryegrass waving in wind, the blades suddenly parting like the sea for you to enter. And that was actually written at Robert Frost's old house here in Shaftesbury, where I live, and where Melinda actually gathered with me last summer for a retreat on that sacred land. So thank you, Robert Frost. I felt a little possessed by the spirit of Frost as I wrote that one. Um, Maybe none of you know how this feels, but this next poem is about burnout. And that moment when you finally realize what's happening and you're able to name it, and and you just kind of release into, I don't know, a deeper, truer energy that you finally have access to again. So this is after burnout, and it was very humbling to see that even though it may not necessarily read the way it does in the book, I ended up leaving out a line of this poem. And so I was embarrassed by that. But then someone wrote to me with a poem of their own, written about how that last line was left out. And anyway, it's just funny how life works and how I felt a lot less embarrassed after someone wrote a poem in honor of that lost line. So I'm just going to read the poem as it is, as it should be. This is called After Burnout. You finally decide to do no more than is necessary, relishing each new gulp of air drawn into your lungs. When out of the flavorless mush of days, even weeks without sun, it happens again. Life calls you back. With a hint of chocolate in the cup of coffee taken alone at the table, or the needles of coneflower seeds sticking to your fingertips as you spread them around in the autumn earth. How all living things want to go on, attaching themselves to whatever body or breath of wind will carry them home. Now stop in the driveway and listen as amber gold leaves, one by one, break off with a simple snap of stem from branch, that sound just shy of silence, saying to you, it's time to release all this relentless reaching for the light. Rest is not death, though it may feel like it at first. So I'll stop there. That the last line that's missing from the book, in case you're curious, is though it may not feel like it at first. It ends with rest is not death. And that just felt like such an abrupt ending, but maybe it was appropriate. Maybe it was meant to be. So I'm going to now hand things over for the moment to my friend Zeina Azzam.
Thank you so much, James. What a lovely gathering. What a lovely way you've gathered all of us. And I'm really delighted and honored to be reading with you, James and Melinda and Carolyn and Christina. I thought I would read a poem about my father and then about one about my mother. I think one of the healing properties, I guess, of poetry is to talk about loss and grief. And there are different ways. Sometimes it's very sad. Sometimes it's just a memory. And I find that when I remember my parents in different ways, it heals a part of me, that loss of them. This is a poem that actually is in one of James's collections. It's called My Father's Hands. They were not large, but thick, fleshy workers in the garden, nursing eggplants and fennel, okra and chard, digging and tilling and weeding, making the soil an obliging host. Maybe that's what made his fingers rough in spots. Or maybe it was the constant leafing through books, a loving lick and a flip flap of the page in search of nuggets that would be turned over and over in his mind. After he died, I found bookmarks between pages, carefully pointing, like tags next to seedlings in the earth. These are the plants I hoped for. These are the ideas that made me grow. Those were the two things that my father loved, were to read and to work in his garden. Second poem is about my mom, as I mentioned, and she also has passed. It starts with a small epigraph, which is an old Arab saying, "Her face is as beautiful as the moon." The title is Far Side of the Moon. She is my mother, though the nugget of who she used to be is now turned away from us, like the far side of the moon, reflecting light somewhere else. My mother pauses at now elusive words, forgets how to do simple things like changing the TV channel, making coffee, reading more than a few lines of a library book. We talk every day about the same things and reminisce too, because she loves to remember her life before the moon shifted. My mother is slowly letting go of her things, the pans and spatulas left behind like disinvited guests, the dough hook and the wire whip, laborers for decades, reluctantly given away. Stained glass butterflies hovering on her living room window have alighted elsewhere. Left in cabinets now are pieces she can't forsake. Tapestries and bowls from Palestine that remind her of scarlet poppies, a cobalt blue sea, an oversized tin box stuffed with black and white photographs from before the war, a sentry for her memories. She has not let go of that war, but the war doesn't linger much anymore on her lips because my mother now ends conversations before it's time, gives up on finishing a sentence. Yet her cratered face, still beautiful, is illumined by visits of a grandchild, telephone calls, a son's embrace. We bring chocolates, elicit a smile that lingers a while. My mother reminds us to look for the moon, even if turned, even if dark. Thank you.
Now we'll have Melinda Burns sharing poems.
Thanks, James. James, your poems are always medicine for me, and I'm very honored to be a part of this wonderful theme that we so need these days. The book that I just put together I feel like it was medicine for me to write altogether, and I'm hoping medicine for people to read. And part of it is to do with my mother and our Native heritage that she was taught to distance herself from residential schools. And so the book is partly my reclaiming that. And so I arranged the poems according to the medicine wheel, which is a powerful symbol in Native American spirituality for healing and wholeness and balance. And as I was putting the book together, this quote from Rumi just happened to find me. And I was so glad to find it because it really speaks to the book, but I think it also speaks to poetry in general. And it says, through love, all pain will turn to medicine. And I think that's what poetry does for us, is it holds our pain and our joy and our sorrows. And because we're bringing attention to them, there's a love that transforms them into medicine. So the last section of my book is the center of the medicine wheel, which is the place of the creator and the great mystery. And one of the poems there is called Medicine. So I thought I would read that one. Medicine. Take one poem every day, with or without water. Take the words of poets from all times and lay them on your forehead like wet rags. Wrap them around your wounds. Take ink of ocean color and write your soul across the page. Take pain and joys and weave them in a tapestry to fly above the clouds. Take words as seeds. Take heart, dear heart, take heart. And that leads into another poem called Heart. Sometimes James and Zeina were both talking about grief, and sometimes in grief, all we can do really is put our hand on our heart and just bring our kind attention back to whatever we're feeling at the moment. So this one is called Heart. Broken love affairs, broken marriage, broken friendships, press on the heart. Crazed like a dropped blue vase, cracked like a frost-heaved flower pot, splintered like a slippery glass dropped from dishwater. All these containers, and yet the heart goes on, self-repairing in ways unknown, to continue its holy work of holding what comes, what goes. And I'll read one more short one. So this one, I find that if a poet writes about their own shortcomings, it seems to be healing for everyone, because everyone recognizes that particular flaw, and somehow there's grace to just voicing it. So this was a short one. I wrote it at a writing retreat that was beside a lovely creek that sang to us every day. It's called Positioning. I like to position things for ease, for convenience, for aesthetics. The picture of red and yellow tulips on the table nearby. The lamp for more light to read by. A big chair turned toward the window for a better view. The placement of things matters to me, and yet, without my help, every rock in this river is exactly right.
Thank you
And
so
I'll
much,
pass it
Melinda.
on. Yeah, you're welcome. I'll pass it on to Carolyn.
I also am very honored to take part in this gathering. And I also want to thank James, my friend, who's coming here to our area in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited about that. He and Rosemary Watola Drummer. My love of poetry came later in life, and it developed alongside my practice of energy, healing, and mindfulness. So the idea that poetry, either writing or listening or reading to a poem, can spark healing is one that's very close to my heart. This first poem, I picked a few poems and my son came to listen to me one evening after work and he chose this one for me to read first. A new day. To hold the day before me like a rare treasure, the hours smooth pearls strung by hand on a thick thread of longing. To recognize my heart connection to the whole and remember my time here is but a blip on the edge of infinity. To honor the miracle of breath, organ, muscle, and bone, today I open my child's eyes to wonder how the doe and the fawn trust me as they nap on the grass, how the thrumming hummingbird glistens green, then ruby in the fading sun. And this one was inspired by Rosemary Watola Drummer. As if to be broken is not also perfect. After her poem, The Way It Is. Lapping sails of wind, and the old tree starts splitting down the middle. Still hanging on, but barely. Time goes by, two thick metal bolts drilled into her trunk, heavy canvas strap strung from limb to limb. Years later, she's still standing. Each spring, her canopy is fuller, her leaves a deeper green than the sister mulberry planted by her side. The arborist tells us the tree will never heal, to enjoy her beauty until she completely splits. The shade she extends is broader, especially welcoming and inclusive. For some reason, I am drawn to this crone, nearly cleaved in two. And this poem I wrote in Mendocino at the Vipassana meditation retreat where James was teaching poetry last April, or facilitating poetry. My Temple of the Green Hills. When I'm searching for trust in the transience of everything, it comforts me to walk the green living hills in meditation. Listen to the creek chanting mantras to the rhythm of spring. I shut my eyes for a few paces, climbing upward, ears open wide to a choir of hawks and sparrows, hymn of rainwater flowing down fissures carved into the forgiving earth. Concerns pass through my mind like rosary beads slipping through fingers. Come summer, the creek will grow silent. The luscious green turn tawny and brown. What choice do we have but to hold what we love close for the time it is with us, then open our hands to let what we have cared for take wing? Thank you. And now, Cristina.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And thank you so much to James for bringing us all together this evening. This is a true honor and pleasure to be in this healing circle of words and the greater circle of all those listening. So thank you all for coming and joining us this evening. I'll be reading poems mostly from my latest collection called The Poetry Apothecary, which was just published in the fall by Kelsey Books. The book is divided into sections, which seems to work quite well for our reading this evening. The first two poems that I'll share are both from the section called RX for Healing. The premise is that if an apple a day can keep the doctor away, so too can a poem a day. The first poem that I'll share is called How to Stay Grounded in Times of Flux. And this was first published by Silver Birch Press as part of their how-to series during the pandemic lockdown. It was my offering to help all of us cope. How to stay grounded in times of flux. Do not cling to clouds, but rather notice the billowing outlines. Notice the shades of opal-like white morphing into hues of heather gray or charcoal misty smoke. See the blue behind the sky's pillows and know that this promise exists for you too. When the snow melts to rivulets on the sidewalk and the earth thaws to a softening green bed, be barefoot in the yard. Let roots reach beneath your feet to the very center of soil. Let the trees know you are listening. Walk in the sun as much as you can so that your hair is light soaked and your cheeks are kissed by rays of canary yellow. Just the movement of following the sun's progress connects you to every other living thing seeking oxygen, a community of breath. Green yourself like a leaf, drinking in droplets of water, slowing yourself down to the minute pace of growth. Your stillness becomes part of the landscape so that even the wind thinks you are tied to the earth by invisible strings, inextricably connected by a force greater than human ambition. You have left that nonsense behind in favor of branches and birdsong. When a storm comes, you are grounded. The next poem that I'll share is about my own personal healing. I've had about 7 major surgeries in my life. This was after one of the first major ones when my husband and I were living in England. And I was a few months in recovery after surgery, and we were visiting the Lake District, a beautiful, mountainous, gorgeous place that for me is a healing place. In search of tiny forest gods. A sharp stitch of pain in my abdomen throws sparks of electricity throughout my once lithe body, a memento from surgery. And yet I continue to follow the well-worn path of the mountain. A trickle of water escapes from the lake at the very top. A wild zigzag pattern of water falling becomes my focal point, a healing gaze, the anticipated happiness that keeps my feet moving. I pause, kneel at the altar of nature to pray, an exercise in gratitude, a reason to sit, take a pill for inflammation, breathe in the apparitions of tiny forest gods floating in my field of vision. We carry on after sharing baguettes with tuna, mayo, and poppy seeds. A flood of ramblers pass us going up, and then another stream hikes down with purpose. To be at peace with myself is to accept that halfway up the mountain is enough. This day, this moment of trying is enough. I am enough. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina. Thanks to everyone who's read so far. And for all that you've shared, I really feel already more embodied, more connected, more in touch with my own heart. So thank you for that. And I wanna read a few newer poems, and I'm kind of responding to to some of Christina's work here. So I think I'll just read a few new ones as well. All right. So this one is called This Is Enough, which builds on Christina's last piece. I don't always know how to quiet the voice in my mind that cries, not enough, not enough. The same refrain since the day I first learned to string together a chain of words. But when I am watering the orchids and the cedar chips release their loamy scent like a sigh of relief, some wiser self inside me says, "This is enough," filling up the pitcher and pouring water over the leaves and aerial roots that turn greener under my sudden attention. Enough, the bare branches of witch hazel sending out red and yellow pom-poms of blossoms before the equinox. Enough, the clock's slow drip of hours spent alone, and then seeing my husband's face after days apart, smiling beside our car because he too has been waiting for this moment, gravel snapping beneath our boot soles as we walk toward each other again. And next one is called You Are Here. And I will tell you too that I always try to tell the truth in my poems. I give myself a little bit of wiggle room, but I like to tell the truth, tell it how it actually is, how it happened. And you probably can't see it, but on my door, there's this little post-it note that is mentioned in this poem. So I just wanted all of you to know that it actually exists. And when I first wrote it and put it up there, it came out of this same feeling of like not feeling like enough, or like always striving, pushing, pushing, pushing. We live in Western society in this grind culture that tells you more and more and more is what you should be striving for. And I think that as humans, and especially as poets, like we have the choice. We can decide to really push against that and decide, that doesn't really apply to me. People may look at you strangely. What? You don't want more? You're not going to strive for more? You're going to take a job that pays you less money because you have more time? But they're just not awake yet to the reality that time and space are a different kind of wealth, and are enough in their own way. So this poem kind of comes out of that space and that conviction. And it's called You Are Here. I don't think we do enough bowing to the simple things, the humble acts, like sweeping dust and hair from the stairs, or wiping down the windows so I have a clear view of that slim crimson strip of the red-winged blackbird, first sign of spring I could kneel and kiss. I bow to the box of my mother's ashes, the way grief stays evergreen, yet still changes, losing its needles and shedding limbs, bending in wind, I think will destroy me. I bow to the blue post-it note stuck to my bedroom door, which says, "You have already arrived. You are here." The words slowing the locomotive of my runaway heart and mind each time I read them. And the beauty is I read them every time I open and close my door to the office here. So it's a little trick for the self, that still feels a little cheesy to me, but it's just become part of the landscape of, my everyday surroundings. So I think I've maybe started to believe it a little. I'll read one more poem, that feels like it kind of fits with that poem because that poem ends with slowing the locomotive of my runaway heart and mind. And this one is called The Return of Hearts and Minds. And I don't know if any of you out there are familiar, but there's this wonderful kind of I guess you would call it a radical political theater troupe that's based here in Vermont, and they're called Bread and Puppet. And they've been touring New England, and of course they are very political. And and I went to one of their recent shows, and they have a lot of homemade puppets and homemade banners. And there was a huge banner in the background that said, "Pleading for the return of hearts and minds." And that really hit me. It really stuck with me. And it's like, yes, people have lost their hearts and minds right now, and or at least many people. And so this poem was in response to and resonating with that notion. The return of hearts and minds. I wake before dawn this morning to live inside the quiet, to feast on the dark bread of the possible. The house breathes on its own, though no footsteps stamp the floor above, no doors slam shut, and nothing stirs outside except the masked raccoon, hungry eyes glowing green. I know who I am in these small hours and watch for signs that daylight is finally coming, spreading like a blue ink that brightens the sky instead of darkening it. This early, I imagine the hearts and minds of everyone who gave them up the day before, tossed out as easily as paper crumpled on the floor, now suddenly returned to them, compassion flowing into each of us like an IV drip, like fresh light meeting our eyes with a chance to begin again. So I'll now hand it over to Zeina Azzam.
Thank you, James. This has been so wonderful to listen to all your beautiful poetry. Thank you so much. I feel it in my heart and in my mind. Um, I wanted to harken back to something that Melinda said earlier about writing about one's own shortcomings. Um, and there is sort of a healing in that, just naming what you did or felt. Um, just helps to talk about it. Anyway, it's this poem is titled Forgive Me. Forgive me for lying to the teacher in the schoolyard, talking ill of my friend behind her back, for making an excuse to leave early while visiting my mother in her sick bed, for walking away from a lover without explanation, running from remorse. I have felt guilty about slapping my small son's hand so many years ago, about acting impatient, bitter, callous, spiteful, unfriendly, or mean with those I love and those I don't. These thoughts return often like mosquitoes in summertime, ready to attack. I try to shoo them away, but hear a continuous buzz. Should I let them exact blood for penitence? There's no peace in my ears or in my humbled heart till I can imagine forgiveness, granting a measure of clemency to myself. Read a couple of short poems. 4 years ago, I became a grandmother, and I wrote a poem titled Newborn. It starts with an epigraph. Excess of being wells up in my heart by Rainer Maria Rilke. Newborn, thrust out of the womb's embrace, his first breath a gulp of light, with tense open lips, a lungful cry, the shock of uncoiling from the sack's warm grip. Skin searches for skin, a primal past imprinted, a downy animal cells seeking, tingling. I belong in your arms. I thrive in this closeness. The message will bloom, a luminous memory tucked patiently away between his temples. It will seep into deepest fascia, bones that received and emitted the original cry. Every move onward, a ripple in an ocean about being loved and loving. And the third poem I'll read is also talks about fascia and bones, but in a different way. It's called Advice from the Chiropractor. And these are all from my book titled Some Things Never Leave You. And it is for my chiropractor. His name is Dr. Sean Woods. Advice from the chiropractor. When you love yourself, the universe loves you back. It's a law, he said, eyes penetrating my core. It was almost a religious statement, and I wanted to close my eyes and believe. Maybe love is rooted in fascia and sinews and muscles and bones, grows inside a body's caverns, streams out to the world like holy water. Maybe prayer is the songbirds and the droplets of rain, the warmth of sun on skin like loving hands. I believe. Thank you. I guess we'll go to Carolyn now, right? Yeah.
Melinda is up
Yeah,
next.
Melinda's it.
I'm sorry. Melinda.
That's
Oh,
all right.
B comes before C, sorry.
No worries. The poems that I've been reading are from my book that just came out last month, Homecoming. And I think a lot of this book was me trying to forge a new relationship with my mother, who's been gone for 20 years now, more than that. But that never stops, does it? That relationship. And I think as we grow older, the relationship can change and deepen, even though they're gone. So this is the last poem that I wrote for the book before sending it off. It's called Orange Shirt Day. One by one, I see them, paper signs affixed to wire, stuck in the ground. Then all at once, hundreds lining the sidewalk and walkways of the high school. Orange handprints and the names of residential schools written on them. One with Mohawk Institute, my mother's school. Two girls in orange shirts hand out orange flags to students coming off the bus, and I ask them for one. What would my mother make of this? School children with "Every Child Matters" on their shirts, the lines of handmade signs, the orange flags. Would she dismiss it? Or would it awaken something in her chest as it did in mine? Some swelling of sorrow and pride as I carry my orange flag downtown. This is a newer poem that's not in the book. It comes from my day job as a psychotherapist for many years, and I find that more and more in therapy, both for myself and for the person I'm working with, it's important to keep us from turning away from what hurts, from trying to get away from it with various strategies that we develop. And so I think there is a healing in staying. And this poem is called Ajar. When something hard happens, be sure to leave the door ajar. Don't lock and barricade against the feeling. Don't run. Invite it in for tea in a quiet place, however foreboding it seems. Take its dark cloak and let it speak long enough to hear the echoes back in time. See it dwindle as you refuse to feed it. See it take its leave, a wisp winding out the open door. And read one more. That feels like a companion to, I think it was one that you read, James. It's sort of like your Post-it note, I guess, about you've already arrived. It's called Grace. Here is a lotus flower for you, born of mud and muck, rising in its own time. I hold it out to you on my hand like the first day of spring. You don't need to earn it. You don't have to deserve it through some grand feat of accomplishment or goodness. You can just accept it. Stoop to kiss the downy head of the newborn day as you cradle it, delicate and hopeful, in your arms. Now on to Carolyn.
Okay. This poem found a home with the journal Braided Way, but what inspired it was James' new anthology, For Which It Stands. I pledge allegiance to the person you believe yourself to be, and to the one you see yourself becoming, that kaleidoscope of possibility. One world, many nations, identities, beliefs, and ways of living. Every single being existing in a universe that craves connection. The light in me bows to that same light in you. Each of us here together in this space and time, life indivisible, liberty to all. Our common hopes to live in peace with essential needs satisfied, and the grace of awareness to evolve fully into who we came here to become. With my whole heart, I want to exist where acceptance reigns, where our priority is to be kind to one another, hands extended and offering, remembering how very much we are the same. And all the poems I've read so far were new, but this one is in my last book, Under the Same Sky. Ordinary Wonders. Every morning is a miracle. When you think about the daylight that greets us upon waking, how it takes only 8 minutes, 19 seconds to get here from our sun, zipping towards Earth at a speed of 186,000 miles per second. Well, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? And our bodies, aren't they also a wonder? They say we breathe more than 20,000 times per day, and our hearts beat 10 times as often. Think about how our legs move us toward our desires, how an open wound melds wondrously anew, how our eyes can recognize the light in the eyes of another. An entire lifetime isn't long enough to count the blessings we carry unaware. I'll also read one more. I read this poem to my mother. She's 88. Hi, Mom. And she didn't like it. She said it made her sad. But I'm going to include it because some people say I write too much, too many happy poems. And this is true. This is a feeling that I've had, called the blues. I want a word for that melancholy feeling, less a fear than a recognition I'd like to ignore. The one that blindsides me when I realize odds are more of the people I love will exit the planet before I do. In this impermanent world, I need a word to explain these dress rehearsals for grieving. At least one word to convey the sorrow that out of nowhere catapults across my heart when I think about being left alone. The always in our face dichotomy to care for someone so much, then possibly need to let them go. If there's a word for this feeling, I haven't found it yet. Somber, mournful, sad, nothing comes close. So if you discover a word for this in any language, please let me know. Maybe if I had a name for these blues, they would be easier to bear. Thank you.
Okay, this has been such a beautiful experience to share time and space with everyone in this healing community. I have 3 shorter poems to finish with. The first one is from the section of my book called RX for Nourishment. One of the ways that I find a great source of healing, much to my husband's chagrin, is to take incredibly long, very hot showers. I'm very happy that we have a large hot water tank. But for me, grounding myself in the body is a wonderful way to find myself, to be centered when I start the day, to get in touch with my senses, the hot water, the lusciousness of the scents of the soap. So this is Sacred Pause. The steady drumbeat of water leads my limbs in a salsa dance, hot steam mixing with the scent of lemon verbena, patchouli. Triple milled soap suds glide and coat my shoulders, swirling circles of clean. I raise my chin, breathe in the sacred holy moments of pause. Sometimes I place my hands over my heart, slow my movements to slow my pulse. Feel the intensity of heat pinking my skin. I wash off yesterday, allow pores to open, welcoming the new story of now with an open heart chakra glow. I dance with my clean outline, feel the floor beneath me in sync with shower rhythm, waterfall flow, footsteps walking towards some unknown destination, some not yet known celebration of an undiscovered me. The next poem is an even shorter poem from a section of the book called RX for Inspiration, about the necessity for gratitude for each and every moment that we have here on this earth. To greet each moment with awakening. Sometimes the moon sits on my chest and I hold the unbearable weight of light, only to discover that I am light too. Gold-touched fingertips, dancing feet waiting at the top of a mountain to be reached, to be loved, for every sparkling cell to sing. And one last one It's the very last poem of my book, The Poetry Apothecary, from the section called RX for Connection. How important it is to celebrate the small details and gestures that make up a life. This is Life Becomes. The way the sun greets your skin with warmth, the curve of your son's smile after he finishes a pen and ink sketch, the feel of water on your toes when you first step into the ocean, the release of breath after sharing a hard truth, the slip of silk on the tongue with the first bite of your mother's egg custard dessert, the scent of fried clams on that first night of vacation. Oh, the anticipation of it. The sound of church bells on the hour, how you recognized the melody every time you visited home. The lengthening sigh when a sunset deepens to a tawny red, then bursts into orange just at the edge of vision. This is how your life becomes a poem.
Wow, thank you, Christina. And thanks so much to everyone who has gathered with us this evening. I can't think of a better way to end the reading than a note like that. You know, this is how your life becomes a poem, because I think what each of the poets tonight showed us all is that daily life is itself sacred and is its own poem. And I think we heal into the living of our lives when we realize that, and can at least treat each moment that we're awake as sacred as we can. You know, we're going to fall down, we're going to forget, but I think that awakening to the fact that life itself is a poem feels very important to me. So thank you, Christina. Thanks to Zeina, Melinda, Carolyn, for joining us tonight, for sharing their beautiful poems. I've tried to share links to their books. You'll also get a recording of this, so if you need to go back and remind yourself about a poem, but I do highly recommend each person's book who read tonight. I know I'm asking you to buy a lot of books here, but they are all beautiful, and being able to bathe in the words and in the images and ideas of these poems really is a balm. And I think Deborah Tremont, who is with us tonight, said it best, that this reading, you know, some readings you attend, whether it's online or in person, you feel very like, you know, I don't know, just caffeinated almost. And I feel excited about life, but also it has felt like a lullaby to me, you know, like a calming balm, this reading. And that was exactly what I was hoping it would be. And it sounds like many others are feeling that as well. So just want to thank each of you for agreeing to join with me tonight and read together, and wishing you all a beautiful, beautiful evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Thank you, all of us.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Take good care. And I'll be sharing the recording soon, so you'll get a little follow-up email as well. All right. Bye, everyone.